Hi guys, this is us again. Remi and Eleonor were still at the HQ of Christie's here in Geneva, and we couldn't leave you without mentioning the second auction of Christie's, which will be held the same day, November 6th, but at 3 p.m.
Correct.
So Remi, amongst the few references that we picked, some of them are actually pretty fun. And I want to start with this Rolex that has this elastic bracelet.
Yeah, so it's a memory from the past, really, for Rolex that in 1940s created these automatic wristwatches,
It's
which
a
are
tiny
nicknamed
one as well.
Yeah, which are nicknamed Bubblebacks, actually. So Bubblebacks because the case back is actually a bit more
round and domed.
Exactly, domed that it usually is on other timepieces, because the movement is automatic and had a rotor, that they had to fit in the case at a time when, you just didn't see that many automatic wristwatches.
And how come the back case actually turns? It's as if you could wind it.
That is actually something for collectors who really enjoy seeing vintage watches. They have to inspect it, in and out. So you have very nice reflexes. What would have happened eventually? You would have opened the case back and been able to see the engravings, the movement, to make sure that everything is really period correct.
But that's something that collectors will come and do prior to the auction if they come to here to Geneva.
For so many watches.
Come and play.
Exactly, that are mostly vintage timepieces.
Okay.
And to go back to the wristwatch, so it has great quality, as you just saw, and it's also really rare, with a black dial configuration called California dial. Roman numerals at the top of the dial, Arabic numerals at the bottom.
To give this contrast of if you don't know how to play, at least you've got both possibilities.
Yeah.
Speaking of Rolex, we're still in the same family, but this is also what is the premises of what will become the Datejust.
Correct, yeah. So a great reference from the 40s.
With a sort of Jubilee, but not really.
Correct, yeah. Watches from the 40s. It's actually the first reference to hold an automatic movement and the date. So again, you kind of see when both watches are together a resemblance, and you see that they've been produced in reasonably, extremely close years and same era. Domed back as well for the movement, and again, it's extremely, extremely rare to find one of the early examples of what will become later the Datejust, right? So for Rolex, this was really the start of what would become, an extremely important commercial success for them.
And still with Rolex, and we were talking about the colored dials and stone dials, what I particularly love about this one is the fact that it's sold in a Chaumet box with matching cufflinks.
For sure. So this is, it's an important Rolex, not only because it's a Day-Date, which is, has reached iconic status throughout the years for modern production, as well as, when the model was first commercialized, but you also have a stone dial, Bloodstone.
Jasper.
Exactly, a Bloodstone dial. And the great thing about this watch is its history. It's a watch that was sold by Chaumet in Paris in the 70s to none other than King Hassan II of Morocco. Okay. So the great thing about it is that the watch is fully documented and that was provided to us by Chaumet, who were very kind to research the provenance with us. It's fully documented basically with a certificate that actually shows that the watch was sold to Hassan II, at the time. They have a picture of the watch at the time when it was sold, showing that it was exactly sold as it is today, with the Bloodstone dial, the cufflinks, as well as the box. So it's a truly original wristwatch, extremely rare due to its provenance. So this is what auction is about, really.
With no bad jokes, we're going to move into military watch, and we're going to close down the bundle of Rolex that we picked for this rare watches auction. Tell me everything about this Rolex on a NATO strap, which has some sort of ivory cream indexes, not really white, that contrasted very well with the black of the bezel, the case, the dial, not the case, but the dial and the bracelet.
So this Submariner is really what it's all about for so many Rolex collectors. It's a wristwatch that was made for the British Navy at the time, the British military. And it's a Submariner that was basically completely modified by Rolex. The bezel is entirely graduated, not only the first 15 seconds, but minutes, but the entire bezel is graduated for better legibility. The hands as well are much bigger than on standard commercialized pieces. You have the T that is really visible on the wristwatch at 6 o'clock. And then you also had changes on the case. So the lugs, for example, are not lugs that could accommodate a stainless steel bracelet. They actually have bars, between them for a NATO strap to be specifically fitted, and they are kind of welded, to the metal, so cannot remove them. On the case back, you have the military engravings as well, which relate to the numberings of NATO, and then the arrow on the case back, which goes back to the British Navy.
That's really cool. On a more playful note, I want to talk about the Domino, not the domino effect, but the actual Cartier Domino that will probably make all the Cartier collectors go crazy, because this watch is extreme. I've never seen it in my life, but it's very true that it looks like a gimmicky watch that you'd put on your wrist just out of fun, and it could, I think, almost be worn on a bracelet as like a second wristwatch that you could wear on the second on your other wrist.
Yeah, and it's definitely a watch that would suit anyone who enjoys vintage watches, but also beautiful and atypical designs.
But those atypical designs were made in you were telling me, the Cartier London at the time where it was the creative years, where we had the Pebble, we had the Cartier Crash, and this one is part of the same era.
Correct. So the wristwatch, as you rightly mentioned, was made by Cartier in London. So it is part of those rarefied productions that Cartier collectors really hunt for. And you just see it's a wristwatch that's just atypical by nature, odd size, a rectangular squarish case, automatic movement as well. So it has all the characteristics really to be something for a great Cartier collection.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, we're going to finish with a Vache Constantin pocket watch. And this one is actually very specific because it's very thin for a pocket watch.
So very thin Vacheron Constantin pocket watch, but it also has a linear calendar.
Could wear it as a pendant.
For sure, and it's the only one of its kind to be known publicly. So linear calendar, Breguet numerals, platinum case, moon face. It's actually a watch that has many great complications in a very thin size, And another very interesting fact for people who go back to the history of pocket watches or watches in general, it was made in the 30s, right after the Great Depression, when Vacheron Constantin, the watch market in general was really not, in a good place. Actually, Vacheron Constantin had almost, changed most of its watchmakers. And interestingly enough, you see that during this time period, they were able to create what today are considered masterpieces, really. Watches for King Farouk or great collectors in America. And this wristwatch, to me, is really one of the key watches to follow in the rare watches auction in the afternoon. It will do really great.
Well, thank you very much for all these insights and anecdotes.
Of course.
And I'm looking forward to our next and upcoming meeting in the next couple of months.